Ignatius. Excellent. All right. So we're back on, and you haven't missed a beat if you heard the recording stop, but just that's where I'm located. And one of the great things about the South Florida area, of course, is our connectivity to the Caribbean, both people, many people, of course, who either grew up or parents grew up in the Caribbean, live here. My chief engineer is from Jamaica. We have Barbadians in our accounting, Trinidadian wastewater operators. So certainly a connection there. And then, of course, working with the utilities in the region and sharing information between the two is one of my favorite things to do, and really one of my major reasons for being so engaged with the CWWA. And both groups learn from each other, which is very important, as well with CAWASA. So here's what I'm going to go through today. Many of you probably know what water loss is, or non-revenue water, but the CWWA has recently set up a specialist group, and we're really just getting started, and we want to get the word out, get people involved. Particularly, we have a 2022 training series that has just started, and I'll go through some of that and water loss as well. Being I am from Florida, I want to share some recent projects that are underway in water reuse, both from reclaimed wastewater, and I know you had an excellent presentation on the application of water reuse in the Barbados recently, and also in potable reuse. And then also capturing stormwater is something that is important when we think of water reuse. When I say capturing stormwater in this sense, catching water before it goes to tide and out to the ocean in an ecologically friendly manner, but also using that water as a resource. And finally, I left a little, left some room at the end to talk about some committees that I'm part of, and they all deal with communication. And this is a communication forum. And so I want to bring you up to speed on those. Will be Operators Without Borders. I know you've had Valerie Jenkinson and other board members from Operators Without Borders on here before, and certainly CAWASA is one of our most important partners, and we work closely with Ignatius on capacity building and disaster response. If you didn't know it, it's the 30th anniversary of CWWA, and I've just had the most privileged opportunity to be part of that committee that's working on a magazine now, and to look back 30 years of an organization and see the accomplishments and hear the memories. It's just been a great thrill for me. Please feel free to ask questions, comments during the talk. I see this as an open dialogue. Obviously, I'm leading it as I have the clicker. But if there's something you'd like to ask, you can either put it in the chat. And I believe, with the number of people we have a good number of people, but it's not, won't be too unmanageable if you just want to come off mute. So the Water Loss Specialist Group, this formed in the summer of 2021. And just also from a logistical standpoint, let me double check. Can you see my mouse if I using it on this screen?
Yes.
Great. I'm fortunate I have a couple different screens, so sometimes I do get them confused with operator error. So, all right, thank you, Ignatius. So our mission, and this is our logo, actually created by Kelvin Romaine from Trinidad Water and Sewer Authority. But our mission overall is to collaboratively work together to reduce water loss in the Caribbean region. And our goals are really to create information sharing exchanges, have trainings, education, public outreach. It's certainly been an important part of successful non-revenue water, which is another way to think about water loss. And also looking at innovative methods and technologies that are happening around the world. And that includes this last bullet of the International Water Association also has a water loss specialist group. I'll go through some of these in the next few slides, but we're publishing newsletters. Again, training, I'm going to keep talking about that because we have a training session coming up February 24th. And one of the things is really, it's a peer group. It's colleagues talking to colleagues. hey, what works for you in Belize? Will that help me, in Port of Spain, and those types of things, talking about it with each other, both within the Caribbean region, but also listening to what's worked across the globe when it comes to water loss reduction. Our members, we got a great team put together. Some of you may have met Stuart Hamilton. If you've attended CWWA conferences over the last number of years, he has either led a panel or gave his own presentations. One of the world's utmost experts on water loss reduction. He works for Maya. He's also the International Waters Association's Water Loss Specialist Group chair. So we've got an N with the world leaders, which is pretty good. His colleague, and he's been working together, and our vice chair is Roland Limberger, and he has almost 40 years of experience in non-revenue water, again, across the globe. And particularly Stuart and Roland have been involved recently in the Caribbean, successful projects in Jamaica and the Bahamas. I mentioned Kelvin Romaine from Trinidad and Tobago. He's the Water and Sewerage Authority. He's our secretary. Wayne Williams, as the CWWA director, is the advisor, and I'm the newsletter person. And so if you have any ideas, and I'm going to mention that on an upcoming slide for the newsletter, we certainly take all ideas and try to implement them. We have two members from Barbados, Nikech Giamont and Sharon Wilson, both from the Barbados Water Authority. Dave Castillo from Belize Water Services Limited, another utility that's had a lot of successes in water loss, reducing water loss. Most of you know Mr. Bernard Etanoff from Dominica Water and Sewerage Company Limited. And also importantly, we have one of our big partners when we look across the Caribbean at successful all programs, not just non-revenue water, but all water and wastewater and the sanitation sector. We couldn't do what we do without IDB, the Interdevelopment Bank, and of course the Caribbean Development Bank for that matter. So we're very excited to have Evan Cayetano with us. And then last and definitely not least, another Kevin. We have to give kudos to the Kevin Club, Kevin Kerr from the Jamaican National Water Commission. We just formed, and so if anyone out there has an interest, I heard a bell. Is that somebody wanting to get in, or is that a question?
No, somebody just got in. That's okay.
Excellent, excellent. Okay. Welcome. But we are inviting new members all the time, and primarily your role is to get the word out about our group. Talk about your utilities experiences with water loss, participate in our meetings, and so not too much work, and I think you'll get a lot of benefit for any time that you invest. So why do we need a water loss specialist group? And first, for some of you, this is old information, but I just want to, these numbers, every time I see them, and I've seen them for many years now, are just staggering when you think of it on a global scale. 346 billion liters per day of water is lost from all urban distribution systems. I mean, just think about that. And obviously it's a sum of parts type of thing where, not every utility's got major problems, and not every country has major problems, but just building all of it up across the globe, it is a large amount of water, enough to supply 2 billion people. And think of some of the areas of the world that need that drinking water. And then cost, everything comes with a cost. $39 billion is the estimate. And those numbers are from Roland, our vice chair on the water loss specialist group. I can get you the paper. I apologize, I did not put the reference on there, but join our water loss specialist group, get to meet the man behind the numbers. This is a slide from Stuart Hamilton that he has shown at many different presentations that I've seen him give. And this is a look, at the annual cost or value of non-revenue water at different regions around the globe. And so this is again, $1 billion. So if we go USA, almost $6 billion. And then this is Latin America, and it's also the Caribbean got cut off. Sorry about that. But so that's at about $8 billion of US dollars, the annual cost. I have one chat. Yes. The general interest, sure. Yeah, we take, no matter your expertise, we have, like I said, the global expert. And my actual role at my utility is not in water loss, but because of my interest in the issue, I bring my facilitation, my writing, and other skills to the team. So yeah, we're a team, and we take all comers. So please, my email address will be at the end. And I can actually just go ahead and type it in. But certainly, and the first step will be the training that I'm going to talk about. If you can make that, you'll get a good understanding of the issue. So yes, thank you for your interest. So the bottom line is, no matter where you're at in the world, even in Europe, there's still $3 billion US dollars. Another chat. Okay, great. All right, next slide. And as I mentioned before, there is some successful non-revenue programs in the Caribbean, and those are certainly ones that we're building off of. The Jamaica's National Water Commission certainly had some great successes in the Kingston and St. Andrew area. And from looking at their website and talking to Mark Barnett and Kevin Kerr, who's on our committee, and many of you know Mark and have seen him present on their program. Certainly one to mirror if you can, but just look at some of these numbers, particularly the overall amount. I'll go right here. The overall NRW reduction decreased by 31% within the Kingston St. Andrews area. But in these social challenge areas where they went in and really focused on metering areas and public education, they were able to decrease non-revenue water by 63%. And so those are really good numbers. And my understanding, again, they're going to expand this to other parts of the country in the coming years. Now, this is from a presentation that Mark gave to the Caribbean and Florida Water Link Up seminar last May 6th. And Ignatius was part of this program. And so I'm really talking about current events, but please make a note or that we are planning. I got to get with Ignatius and Wayne Williams to do another one this year, but the Florida section of the American Water Works Association teamed up with CAWASA, with CWWA, and the Puerto Rican Water and Environment Association, which is an offshoot of the AWWA. And we had a great 2-hour session. And the idea is, you've probably heard of musical link ups on the radio and the internet. And so we said, why not a water link up? And so we had participants throughout the Caribbean and Florida, and actually England and Canada as well. And that'll be the first week. We hope it'll be tentatively the first week of May, which is AWWA's Drinking Water Week. So Ignatius probably doesn't even know that I want to do it again, but hopefully he is on board. And if that time doesn't work, we'll work to make it better. But it's enough time out for planning. So put that on your calendars as something to look forward to. Mention the newsletter. Please contact me if you haven't received this. We call it Finding Water. I'm not going to read the message from our chair, but there he is, Mr. Stuart Hamilton. One of the big things about it is sharing current events in water loss reduction. In this case, Evan wrote an article that the IDB, the Interdevelopment Bank, had done. I wrote an article about the link up. We also spotlight individual members. CWWA President Sarah J. Govia in this particular issue. And it's an opportunity to find about training, conference opportunities. We like to highlight, again, partners and individual members. So if you have an interest there, please let us know. But we're getting ready to put out the second one. We're going to wait till I believe, till we get our second training complete. So speaking of trainings, the first water loss specialist group training just took place on the 27th of January. We had 110 participants, which we were very excited about. I know we all miss meeting in person. I got to go to an in-person meeting last week in the Tampa region. And even though it was a 4-hour drive, it felt good. But we might as well take advantage of the virtual ones too. And so we were able to really get a good number to our first training. Roland Limburger gave the presentation. Again, he's our vice chair, and talked about water balance. And really that's kind of understanding, you know, where your system is when you're setting out to do a non-revenue water program. Roland calls this the key first step. And I can get you a copy of that presentation if you're interested. And please note the training is free. And so the only thing that we ask is that you register on the CWWA website so that we can, you know, keep track of who's coming and get you even more information as it's available. So I've mentioned it twice. 24th of February, our next training will be by Stuart Hamilton, and he's going to be talking about active leakage control and technologies used to locate and reduce real losses. And so if this is part of your program, or you think it needs to be part of your program, you need improvements, take a couple hours of your day, please. And although your time is valuable, again, I think the investment in this type of education, it will be very useful to your utility and your growth as a professional. Just to give you a tease of what Stuart will be talking about, this was also something that he presented at the Caribbean Florida Water Link Up, the sustainable leakage control strategy, and the 4 elements, including the pressure of your water, you know, keeping that at an optimal level. Obviously, we have to have good pressure to get it out to the community in a safe and you know, quality manner. But sometimes too much pressure can cause problems. Active leakage control, which includes assessment, asset management. That's something Ignatius and I have talked about, you know, the importance of, you know, knowing your system, being able to management, knowing sort of where the older parts of the system, or where you're constantly having issues, or where you need to construct a system or something to that nature. Speed and quality of repairs, and obviously that can be tied to dollars or monetary constraints, which are understandable, but just something we have to manage no matter where your utility is. And then just some of these the physical losses, and this is these are the problems inside, and these are some of the strategies that Stuart will go over on the 24th of February. All right, so I mentioned that I'm kind of given different areas of water resources and water utilities with this presentation. So I'm going to jump to reclaimed water in South Florida but before I do, any questions on the water loss specialist group? All right, hearing none. I wanted to, again, looking at, and thank you, Ignatius, for having the foresight to record these sessions, because I was able to go back and watch a couple of them, and I said, well, you know what, I'm not that far away. I talked about water reuse at the last CWWA conference. I know Chris Corbin has talked to this forum, and Chris and I have, you know, shared conversations on implementing water reuse at a broader scale in the Caribbean, particularly as his UNEP team looks to, and along with other funding partners, looks to expand wastewater treatment in the region. Where applicable, it's not going to be applicable everywhere, but where applicable, it may be a good time to consider water reuse while you're building or expanding wastewater. So just to give you what is happening in Florida, in our state, we have 400 utilities. It really has been that produce water reuse. Most of them are under 5 million gallons a day, and in fact, even under 1. So it's another sum of parts where, because of the size of our state and the vast number of utilities, it's one of the reasons that we're a national leader with almost 900 million gallons a day produced per day. And I've just recently heard of a good way to visualize 1 million gallons a day. And because for those of you that work with the public or even, within your own entity, people may not be able to kind of figure that, to see that visually. So 1 million gallons a day is almost a US football, not world football, soccer, but US football field of 300 feet long, 50 feet wide, and 10 feet deep. So if we get about 900 of that going on across our state, and then the overall capacity is actually at 1,800. So we're still looking to grow. One of the things of Florida, we do have droughts, certainly not drought conditions of some of the Caribbean nations, such as Barbados is a very arid island. But beyond droughts, the other reason water reuse is such a big deal in our state is population growth. It's estimated between 1,000 to 2,000 people are moving to the state every month, and so, or every day, every day. And so that means, well, how are we going to get them water? And so we're even looking at the potable reuse that I think you had a presentation on towards the end of 2021, where you actually take the reclaimed water and treat it. The technology's there, and treat it to a drinking level. It's being done in Singapore, for example. 40% of their water reuse is potable reuse. Oh, their overall drinking water supply. In Florida right now, though, irrigation is our #1 source, as you can see from this pie chart. Our Florida Department of Environmental Protection is our regulatory agency, and they put out a water reuse inventory each year. And so public access areas just essentially means irrigation. And I like these numbers: 440,000 residences were able to use, and you see the other numbers for the different categories, an alternative water supply instead of our traditional water supply, instead of groundwater, which is what most Florida utilities make their drinking water from, although we do have some surface water. Next slide. So in Broward County, in a lot of ways that utilities end up changing is because of laws. And so we currently have a pipe that goes out to the ocean and discharges secondarily treated wastewater. And our state legislature said, no, we need to stop that practice, and we need to take 60% of that and turn it into water reuse. And the purple pipe is what we use to show that that's what is going through those systems. And so our capacity now, we're a larger utility. So, and I realize that. So some of you may be looking at these numbers and wondering how this technology could be applicable to you. But I think at the very heart of the technology and its use, there's similarities. Miami-Dade County, of course, is even much larger than us. But our initial costs were over $500 million to make this happen, to go to 26 million gallons per day. And the reason is South Florida, for those of you, I'm sure, either been here or seen us on TV, no, we're kind of crammed in here. We got like 6 million people stuffed in a box or on a sardine can in a way. And in order to put in new pipelines, it's a big deal. You have to stop traffic, you have to work at night. And so those costs, just escalate quickly. And it's for those of you that are running utilities in urban systems, in any place in the world, it's the same issue. People don't like to wait for construction when they're trying to get to where they want to go. So we, the other reason I want to talk about this project is it's a partnership. So we were able to work with our fellow county, Palm Beach County, to meet our water reuse needs, and our prices decreased to basically $140 million. And we were very, of course, our elected officials were very excited about that. And our direct costs are 90 million, and then the Palm Beach County is 50 million, but we'll be repaid. We're paying them to build it, but then we'll be repaid with revenue from it. And then it's, again, it takes partnerships, interlocal agreements, BCB and Broward County and Palm Beach County. So partnerships can certainly make things happen. I realize in many cases in the Caribbean, it's one utility that's pretty much working within the country. But even if you can find a partner in a sense of funding and those types of things, they can enhance your project. So this is a map of our system. This is Broward County. Miami would be, again, about 20 miles down south. This is the Atlantic Ocean. And then the Everglades, which is our large natural ecosystem, is out here to the west. And then in this little box, there's 2 million people. And so they went up, our engineering team put the pipeline north, went through a park. We're actually having a ribbon cutting on Friday with our mayor. We got some of the state agencies and some of the city mayors. So one of the things we like to do is when we're able to complete a project like this is show our elected officials that this is important, that there's success, and it helps get finance new ones, right? And so we also had a state of Florida grant to make this happen. Okay. Oh, sorry about that. Just some picture show. We also had to make some improvements at our plant. And so these are chlorine contact, after the reclaimed water gets it through the major part of our wastewater treatment process, ends up in this extra high level treatment, and just some pictures of that. We're also at a new electric distribution building to give us redundancy overall with the plant, not just for this project. But one of the things we're trying to work in our resiliency strategies is not to rely on one thing, not just to rely on one power source, for example. All right, next pictures. Oops, sorry, operator error. This is why I don't work in a nuclear plant. I might push the wrong button. So here's what the pipeline construction worked like. And then, like I said, night shift. Some of the people from our contractors out there at night putting this 42-inch pipe in along this major road. Of course, the big difference South Florida and a lot of the Caribbean is we really don't have any relief or mountains or hills or anything, but we do have landfills. And so that's what that is in the far part of that photo, dealing with 2 million people's worth of solid waste. And then we have a pump station that sets it off on its way. All right, so just want you to know, keep us in mind if you're looking at water reuse, as if you want lessons learned, how we developed the program, and then when I gave my talk to CWWA, I also talked a lot about working with your elected officials and public education. And I know from listening to the comments, like when Chris gave his talk to this forum, public acceptance is certainly something that you have to work and work a lot at, and it can take a long time. Now, in Florida, we're through having to tell people it's a good idea to put it on their yards. It's very widely accepted. You saw the 440,000 residences or homes. Where we're at now is the next step, and trying to start an education campaign about the potable reuse and being able to drink the water. And in San Diego, that it took them, and in California, It took them almost 7 years to do a successful outreach program. Doesn't mean it'll take you that long. You know, San Diego's a big city. And if you're just looking for irrigation as a use, I think it's a much easier education effort than actual drinking it. All right, I'm going to switch now to stormwater reuse. And one of the reasons I'm bringing this up, when I gave my presentation to the CWWA, and thinking of water reuse, not just coming from a wastewater plant. And we get 60 inches of rain a year in South Florida. And so capturing stormwater to use in our utility business has been ongoing now for over 20 years, 25 years. And when I was preparing my CWWA paper, I found this Global Water Partnership, just a great resource, status, need, and role of freshwater storage in the Caribbean. And I can't see the name as well, sorry about that, but Dr. Adrian Cashman, who I think many of you know, used to be with University of West Indies. Is your plant set up specifically for reuse water? Very good question. So originally it was not. Our plant is about 40 years old. Back in the 60s and 70s, basically there was just little package plants, we call them, less than 1 million gallons a day, just dumping in our canal systems. And then we regionalized wastewater treatment pretty much in most places in the United States, in the urban areas. And so, no, we had to retrofit inside the fence. We had to, set up a whole reclaim, some of those pictures I showed you of the chlorine contact chambers. Fortunately, and this is something to keep in mind if you're ever, and people that are designing your wastewater plant will probably do this. If you're building a new one, leave some room if you can. And it's not always a possibility, but if you can leave some room, because things change and reclaimed water really started to become a thing in Florida in the early 90s. So our plant was already 20 years old. So we did have to, retrofit our system and then allow that expansion. Good question. So anyway, Dr. Cashman, I believe now he's still very much engaged in the Caribbean water dialogue, but they put, along with his co-author was Anika Cole, status, need, and role of freshwater storage in the Caribbean. Another area that we share some commonalities, and of course we're going to share some differences. Both our regions, or much of the Caribbean that's not in the more drought-prone areas, certainly receives a lot of rainfall. And as I mentioned in South Florida, especially an average of 60 inches, and I've lived here 30 years, and we've had 90 some years. And so can we capture that? Can we harvest it? And the link for this really good document is here. It's again, that idea of capturing it before it goes to the sea. And even in a high relief area or in a very flat area like South Florida, capture that water for when we need it during the dry season. Another, of course, for resiliency of drought and population growth is the water loss that I just spoke about. And then one of the ideas that I really like, and of course seen when I'm in the Caribbean, and you all will see it probably on your drive home today, but personal rainwater harvesting certainly has grown, and there's a good link, the Caribbean Rain Harvesting Toolbox, if you have any interest in that. But so just thinking of it, holistically, of capturing fresh water before it gets into the ocean. So I'm going to go through a project that we're part of. It's current events in South Florida, just to show you how important it is to us. And some things will resonate, and some things, will be different. And no matter where you go in the world, you're probably not going to look hydrologically like South Florida. We have what's called the South Florida Water Management District, which actually starts all the way up in the city of Orlando. So if you've been to Disney, that's actually in a hydrologic sense connected all the way down to Fort Lauderdale. Our big heart in the middle is Lake Okeechobee, and then all these lines represent canals. That there were some hurricanes in the 20s through the 40s, some droughts, and this was just all Everglades, and there was flooding, and a lot of people perished during hurricanes. And so the federal government came in and put these systems in, over 2,000 miles of canals, levees, 1,200 structures and culverts and pumping stations. And so the South Florida Water Management District, who I actually worked for 7 years ago, manages all of this. And why I'm showing you this is to give you a backdrop of how we're trying to store water within this artificial system. And when I think of potential application in the Caribbean, I think even though our relief, our mountains, obviously, and the speed of water is different, and those types of things, turbidity levels, where we're capturing it the most for our drinking water supply is on that coast, in that flat, when I think of a Caribbean region, maybe some of your more coastal plains could be an applicable part of where this type of strategy would work. And from a map standpoint, this is Miami, Biscayne Bay, this is Broward County, and this is that Everglades region that I was talking about. So sort of the way South Florida drinking water works, this is a schematic, the Atlantic Ocean. I mentioned the canal system, which we do have inlets, and our boats, of course, and our shipping go out, but it's also where our fresh water goes out. Our drinking water, most of it in South Florida, comes from 100 feet or 150 feet or so. And then we also put some of our wastewater all the way down through a deep well, they're called, 2,000 to 3,000 feet, into an area called the Boulder Zone, which is keeps it from coming back up. And then we have what's called the Upper Florida Aquifer. So like most places around the world, different geology, but this Biscayne Aquifer is extremely productive. And frankly, I don't think we could have the population that we have in South Florida and expect to have more if it wasn't for this very unique aquifer. And you can see on this map of the state, the extent. It really doesn't go that far north. It's out in the Everglades, and really I think a product of the way the oceans have receded and in geological time, being at the end of a continent. Oops, wrong button. So within that context, and you can see the gray area, this is our Biscayne Aquifer. All these little blue dots, or if you're Miami-Dade County, these big blue dots, represent what are called public water supply wells. And so these are straws down into the Biscayne that pull the water up for our drinking water. And again, so thinking about our system, the South Florida Water Management District system has salinity structures, but many of our coastal areas are starting to have something I know we share with you as a threat, and that's saltwater intrusion, because you can see the close proximity to the Atlantic Ocean, and then sea level rise, of course, is exacerbating that. Just coming on closer and how different governance is for drinking water, even one county away in South Florida, in Broward County, all these different colors are different cities. We actually have 31 cities within one county. If you didn't live here for a long time or grew up here, you'd kind of scratch your head and why is that? But it's just the way we grew up and the way that it's just stayed the same. And each city wants to hold on to their utility. And so we share information, of course, we cooperate, we have interconnections for emergencies, but that's just the way that the system it was set up. Miami-Dade County is different, but Miami-Dade County operates almost the whole county. There's some differences. And these are just some numbers for perspective. I'm not going to read every of them, but this is sort of the factor of having all the different agencies have different treatment flows. And so this is more of a reference for after the presentation. And then the other thing we have, and this is important, we think about stormwater systems as ways to add alternative water supply development to your pool of water that you're using, the natural systems. And so pulling fresh water out of a system can be a good thing, but we also have to see to balance it with whatever the natural system needs may be. And in South Florida, when the original South Florida Water Management District was set up, the Everglades were dramatically hurt, and fires were happening, populations, and it's not just because of the natural beauty of them. They're a resource, and they're also a big tourist draw for us. And I'm sure as many of the natural areas are within the Caribbean. So as when we look at our water systems, we try to look holistically at all the needs and not just at the utilities. So I'm going to talk about just for a few more slides, the C51 reservoir, and LEC stands for Lower East Coast. Sorry, I didn't spell that out. But this is one of the ways that we're storing water in South Florida is through a large reservoir. And again, it's really close to the coast. So I could envision, if you had the footprint, and it might be, something, again, going back and looking at Dr. Cashman's document and understanding where this could be potentially applicable in your area. So the C51, and I'll have a map here in a second, is located just north of Broward, which puts it about 50 miles. Sorry, I'm talking in miles. We once started the metric system in our education, and it didn't take. So I'm miles, and somebody can do a quick conversion. But it's owned by a private company that does rock mining, and that's something also to think of. If you have mining in your country, after the mining is done, is there an opportunity to use a feature to store water? Of course, ensuring that it's done safely. So the future plans are take the rainwater that falls in the basin and then store it in this reservoir instead of letting it go to the estuary where it actually can do a lot of damage, and then use it for public water supply. The cost, so we were the first, my utility, to buy the capacity at 6 million gallons a day. And the capital cost over us is $27 million. So that's US, dollars can differ in different areas, but just to give you a general idea. And for alternative water supply, that's actually a pretty good bargain when you compare to having to do, treat your wastewater to reclaimed level. But storing water and using gravity, it's also less, cutting down your carbon footprint, all these types of things that we're also as utility thinking about in our resiliency strategies. Okay, all right. I have got the fast clicker today. Okay, so this is the South Florida map again, and just to give you sort of a visual, this is an urban area, the Palm Beach International Airport. This is the saltwater area. And actually this area also includes a big agricultural area. Most of the east coast of the United States vegetables are grown in this area. And it's also big for sugar farming. And then we have a natural area that's part of the Everglades here. So what we have are these big features, and there's a canal system that actually runs right down this road. And if we didn't capture the water in these reservoirs, the water would go down this canal system and to actually, in many cases, at high volumes for our systems, and damage this water body. It's called the Lake Worth Lagoon. Oysters, other types of shellfish, certain fish species. It can be an ecological harm, and into seagrasses as well. But if we can capture it, we save that harm from happening. And so this all began, and I mentioned the Everglades, and there's an Everglades restoration program, which storage is also a very important part of that success. But the other part of this I want you to take home is, again, coordination and partnerships between a number of the South Florida cities and then Broward County. And then the South Florida Water Management District was very involved. And I think knowing some of the country's government setups, I know many have a water management or a water resource arm that's different than the utility. And so that is one example I hope you could take away, is that you're working with those entities to develop these types of projects was critical. And just a sort of zooming in, not quite drone level. I think we're probably at helicopter level, maybe a little higher. But we'll have these different cells. This area was old sugar land, sugar fields. And there's also a electrical plant that's already existing there. But there'll be a lot of pumps and different instruments in order to move the water, because eventually what will happen, we're using it across the region. And so again, depending on your geography and then the way that you're laid out, and the ability to pump water, which, you know, in the Caribbean, this won't work everywhere. But we're going to move some of this water 40, 50 miles. And the idea of piping it has not been approached yet, because we already have the existing canal system. And so that is why we are going to use canal system to move the water. Here's the C51 over here. And then these arrows show the way it'll go down an existing canal, down to Broward County, come around here to the other map. All these circles represent those straws in the ground that I talked about. And then the water will actually end up in Miami-Dade County. These are our drinking water well fields. And the importance of this map is I'm going to show you what we do with the water that we've saved. So that water that was in the C51 canal is now moved 40 miles to central Broward County. SRW is our South Regional Well Field. And we will use that water to seep into the canal system, and it will, a process that we call recharge. And so recharge is done a number of different ways. In some cases, you can use pipes to recharge in the ground. Our Biscayne Aquifer, our upper groundwater, is so porous, it literally looks like a piece of Swiss cheese when you look at a cross section. So by building the level of the canal up with this new water that was going to go to the ocean, we are now able to create a head pressure that recharges that aquifer. And we've created an alternative water supply. And so for us, it'll be, like I said, 6 million gallons a day. Currently, we treat about 30 million gallons a day for our part of the drinking water pie in Broward County. All right, what time is it? Okay, so is there any questions about that? I know it may have been a lot of information to go through relatively quickly, but I wanted to give you a snapshot. And if nothing else, and if you haven't thought of it, start thinking about stormwater as a tool for your entities. And I think it's something we could talk further on, maybe even get Dr. Cashman on the line, but certainly a resource. And I'll just close up because I know we're coming upon the hour. I have time, Ignatius, for questions. I am involved in 3 major communication efforts, and I just wanted to. I've left this part of the presentation open, depending on how much time we had. But
no, feel free. We can go on.
Okay.
I was just going to ask you. That's quite an interesting one, because for many of the countries in the Caribbean, one of the things, well, at least in some parts of the Caribbean, I should say, where you have higher rainfall areas, yes. A lot of that rainfall washes off to the sea.
That's right.
And I have been suggesting one of the issues that we need to have is greater storage of that water. And often we are not able to build the sort of dams in the rivers or streams, but there is a possibility of sort of building well, I think you cited an example that you've used where you can sort of use the live butyl liners and store it naturally in ponds or creating some ponds to store that excess water that can be treated. And once it can be stored, it is of a fairly good quality that it can be treated, rather than we are still trying to deal with concepts of reuse, which is as you indicated, quite an expensive and has a heavy carbon footprint. So that could be a good solution. So I just thought I would highlight that.
Good. No, and thank you, Ignatius. And that's why I was so glad. You know, that's one of the great things about doing a presentation. It makes you get out there and see what other people were thinking about and proposing. And Dr. Cashman and his fellow author and have hit on something that you were already thinking about. And so now it's just a matter of fitting that concept into your particular area. Yeah, the one thing that, you know, putting up dams and things like that, it's the same thing with hydroelectric. There is the ecological trade-offs, and so maybe there could be diversions, for example, and keep the natural flow of a system, but still be able to get excess water during times of excess water that's damaging to the ecosystem. But yeah, I think there's certainly an opportunity, and I certainly want to continue the conversation. I have a question here. What are the measures that are observed to prevent contamination in the process of recharging? That's a very good question. One of the probably the best framework we have is our regulations that our water quality standards we have, both for our drinking water and our surface waters. And so and then we're fortunate to have a pretty broad monitoring network to understand if there are any contaminants. And so we have also the third part of that. So we have there's standards for the surface water body. There's standards for the groundwater, but we also have what's called source water protection. And in our area, they're called well-filled zones. And so where you see all these black dots, we have a law that I forget the exact, I can get you the information, please email me, that there's a certain distance in feet, depending on the type of contamination and businesses. For example, we wouldn't allow a gas station to be into this area. Now, along the route, it would be more of the surface water protection that we need to help with the contamination. But once it gets close to this area, the land use really, when we think about protecting our water quality, the land use is so important. And so that's why we have these well-filled protection zones that help with preventing the contamination. Good question. And then the other thing that helps us, and I'll take another question, is that water then had the recharge process, you know, it takes it a while to sort of filter through a highly carbonate system. So contaminants are also caught up in that. Any other questions? Okay, so the last one, I think I will not go to the websites, but I want to spend a couple minutes, and you'll have the links here. And did they get a copy of the presentation, Ignatius?
It's recorded, Kevin, and everybody gets a copy.
Oh, that's true. Thank you. Hey, Valerie, I didn't see you on there.
Hi.
Good to see you. So Valerie's part of the reason I'm here today. Thank you for that. So there's 3 different committees I'm working on that involve communication. This is a communication forum. The first one is with Valerie, and she is our chair and founder of the Operators Without Borders. We're just starting a communication committee. In fact, our first meeting is next week. And one of our biggest audiences that we want to hear from and know what your how you would like to communicate, things that you think Operators Without Borders can do better. For those of you who have worked with us in capacity building and also in our disaster relief. So want to reach out to you and please share this with your colleagues that we're out here now. We've done, I think, a great job of communicating, and a lot of it is being able to be part of these organizations like CAWASA. But communication is, I say, it's like paddling up a river. And if you stop paddling, you lose your communication. So we're continuing to paddle harder and communicate better. And so please consider that when you leave from today's event. I'm also privileged, as I said at the start of this, to be on the 30th anniversary committee for the CWWA. Please take an opportunity, go watch some of the videos from the case, the stories of the people that started the great organization. Some great photos as well. We started a magazine process, and Valerie and Ignatius were two of the best contributors because they got theirs on right away. But it was sort of like peeling an onion back as we got into the history of the organization, 30 years of conferences, and the number of people we realized we wanted to have contribute to this. We're up to about 40 authors so far. And so then we hit the holidays. And so now we're going to try to bring them for a landing towards the end of this month. But look out for that. It's just a great record of a great organization and that has moved the needle on water dialogue and resiliency and also sanitation over the last 5 to 10 years. And then finally, CWWA's public relation. We have a new public relation officer, Angela Franklin, who I also sit with on the 30th anniversary committee. And it was actually her idea of how our magazine is going to be laid out with a focus on each country and then contributors either from that country or part of the conference. So it's really going to be, it's going to be great. The magazine, I really like the idea because it highlights, showcases a country, but then having it together in one document symbolizes the unity of working together. So Angela is hitting the road running with the public relation officer, and same with the Operators Without Borders call that I've asked. Let us know, please. If you've got ideas, we're both groups are just forming, have a lot of energy, and certainly no good things are going to come from them. And so I just wanted to leave those for you, and then I will give you my contact information. I do have WhatsApp. So certainly a great communication tool. Conversations lead to solutions. I have time for questions, but I also know it's 6:08 where most of you are, and well, actually for Valerie it's 3:08. But there's the save the date again. I really encourage you on February 24th to join us, and then we are planning to have similar training opportunities at least into the summertime, and then by then we'll all be sort of focusing on the next CWWA conference. So with that, I open it up for comments. Valerie, certainly if you'd like to have anything to add as far as current events with Operators Without Borders. I really thank you for the opportunity again, Ignatius, and look forward to being part of more as we continue to roar through 2022, February 9th already. So thank you again.
Thank you very much, Kevin. And I think that was a good way to set the tone for 2022. I think it gives us a good perspective of things that have been ongoing and some of the plans regionally and with our other development partners. And certainly there are good opportunities for our networking with utilities in the South of Florida area. And we hope we can continue those partnerships as we progress throughout this year. And of course, to thank Valerie for always finding us some good lineup of speakers.
Fabulous speakers.
Yes, indeed. And we Just before, I think, well, I don't know if anyone has any questions or any comments they want to make at this stage. If not, I would stop the recording just to say